to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a calm body, a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. And I'm excited to be here today with my guest, Ryanne Mellick. Hello, Ryanne. How are you doing?
I'm good, Maria. How are you?
I am excited to have this conversation with you. You are a mental health therapist, and that is a topic I'm passionate about, especially because you work not only with adults, but with kids. And I think that is definitely an area nowadays that is getting so much attention, unfortunately, for a reason. But before we dive into that topic, let's talk about who Ryanne is. So give us 3 words that describe you and a little bit of a backstory behind each word.
3 words. I would say I'm a mother. I am compassionate, and I am also very passionate about just life and mental health in general. So a little bit about my background. I have 10 years of experience working in mental health. Most of that is with our children and youth that are struggling with various mental health issues. I've worked in quite a few different settings. I'm based out of Minnesota, so doing some work here locally in the cities and really just focusing heavily on breaking the stigma of mental health is kind of my focus. And yeah, I'm, like I said, a mother, a pretty new mom. I had a baby during the pandemic, so that's also been a learning experience and an exciting adventure. Yeah, that's about me.
So you mentioned the word stigma, and stigma and mental health usually go hand in hand. However, I do think there has been a lot more emphasis on mental health, especially since COVID. And again, unfortunately, because of the spike in mental health issues that we have seen. Do you think that's doing anything to change the stigma around it? Do you think more people are seeking help, especially younger, like parents for kids?
I definitely think it's helping, and more people are getting the help that they need. There's definitely still far too many barriers to it, but I think the pandemic and the spike in symptoms have really opened up the door for bigger conversations, and even the first conversation about I need help, I am struggling, and getting people to find ways to get that help is what I'm noticing. So I wish we were doing more to break down the stigma, but I think this is a really good baby step in the right direction.
So we have adults who, in some cases, are embarrassed to say, I feel off, I feel wrong. You know, there's so much, let's take moms, societal's expectations. You got to take care of the kids. You got to take care of the job. You got to do this. You got to do this. And you're like, I don't have time to address my mental health issues. In the context of kids, what are some things we should pay attention to and note and kind of be a warning red flag for, I should look into that, or maybe I should ask an expert that there might be a bigger issue?
I think one of the biggest signs or symptoms is, one, if your kid is asking or expressing to talk to someone else other than you, other than their friends or teachers or other caregivers. If they are directly saying, I want to talk to someone, you should acknowledge that and do something about it. Another big one is any kind of change in behavior. Like if your kid is outgoing or really active in sports and suddenly they're withdrawing or isolating or don't want to go to activities, that's also a red flag that something else is going on. And just like a change in behavior at school, change in academics, those can all be signs that something is changing with their mental health and they could benefit from professional help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think are, I know you also teach yoga, which I love because I teach Pilates, and I do think there is a lot of correlation between self-care and mental health. And I do think personally and subjectively that movement is one of the best things that you can do for mental health. I will give you an example. I was doing some work with kids and movement, and one of the parents said, well, I told my son he needs to do this because he needs to lose weight. And I was like, oh, yeah, exactly. That is exactly how I felt. And I was like, That is not what this is about. I mean, yes, movement, and that can get into a whole other conversation. I do think we put movement into that box that it's to stay skinny, which is a whole other issue that I have with that, because movement has so many benefits. One of the biggest ones, mental health, and it can serve us in such greater ways rather than just weight loss. Talk a little bit about as an expert, about the benefits of movement. Again, especially in the context of kids, I don't think our kids move enough. Recess times are not what they used to be. Outdoor time is not what it used to be. Kids are just not incentivized to get out and play. Like, I could not get off the streets. My parents had to beg me to get home. And now we have the reverse. Kids don't want to get out. It's too hot. There's no AC. They want to sit and watch TV and be in technology. Can we address that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the way that we are as society right now. And also the unfortunate part of it is that for so long, exercise and movement was correlated to weight loss. That is, you strictly moved to lose weight or to maintain a weight. And so for parents who are saying that, that's what they grew up hearing that, right? That is all that they know. And as a yoga teacher, and also I have a specialty in pediatric yoga, specifically for mental health, movement helps to regulate our nervous system, right? So it helps to keep us in homeostasis. It helps to keep us balanced, which at the end of the day is the most important part to our mental health and overall well-being. We can't go through life if we're dysregulated. That leads to like dysfunctional relationships and difficulty at school and at home. And any kind of movement, whether it's Pilates or yoga or even walking, has such a everything like, yeah, tumbling, any kind of movement, just getting up and taking a lap around the office throughout the day can have such a positive impact on your mental health. And that's much more important in moving forward. And that even trickles down obviously into weight loss and weight management. But really the key component of the movement is just keeping your body and your nervous system balanced.
And you mentioned the nervous system. I talk a lot about nervous system and nervous system regulation and sympathetic, parasympathetic, and cortisol and all of those things. So let's touch base on that for people who are like, what do you mean regulate your nervous system? I talk a lot about how we experience dysfunction of the nervous system or overload of the nervous system into our body, what that means, like tightness, stiffness, the way our motion is limited. Let's hear it from the expert. Talk about let's go back to the basics. What causes your nervous system to be thrown off?
Any kind of stress or situation that causes you to become heightened or hyper aware. So I think one of the most popular ones is like you're in the woods and you see a bear. You become dysregulated, but what your nervous system does is it puts you into either fight, flight, or freeze, right? So that you can figure out, do I need to run? Do I need to freeze so I can survive? Or do I need to fight so I can survive? And that increases your cortisol levels and your stress hormones. And that's where the nervous system becomes dysregulated, is when the stress hormones shoot up and then there's no way to bring them back down. So we don't get the sense of safety. We don't get brought back to regulation. And that's where we start to see the problems occur. So the point of movement or mental health or learning coping skills is to help bring your stress hormones back down and bring your good, healthy hormones that keep you balanced, like your endorphins, back at an even playing field.
Yeah. Signs of you're dysregulated?
Signs that you're dysregulated. Any kind of irritation, change in your mood, excessively tired. You might just be like physically feeling off too. I think if you are more self-aware and in tune with your body, you can tell when something's not right. You feel off. And that is a sign of dysregulation.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to ask you specifically for kids, because kids may or, and especially depending on their age, they may or may not be regulated. Aware.
Mm-hmm.
The difference, they can be like, something is off, but they don't know what's off. They don't know what a nervous system is. They don't know what an overwhelmed nervous system is. For parents, again, that snappiness, irritability, reactiveness to life, annoyance with everything. Anything else in kids to pay attention to?
I think all of the things that you mentioned, and some kids go the opposite way. So some kids who are dysregulated will shut down, they will withdraw, they will become almost emotionally stunted or not show any kind of emotion. And that's also a sign of dysregulation.
I'm so glad that you brought emotions, because I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I'm always like, experience your emotions. Where do you feel your emotions? You have to find a way to release your emotions. And she said, I don't have time to deal with my emotions, which unfortunately, I think it's a very common way to deal with emotions. Mm-hmm. I don't have time. I'll push it to the side for later until, I think for many people later is when I say the sewage system overflows, and that's where we really need to seek help. Can you talk a little bit about that, finding ways, healthy ways for kids and adults to deal with the overstimulation? I mean, our kids now, adults are exposed to chronic stress, but I think that is becoming a reality for kids nowadays at a very young age as well, with high expectations, too much going on, sports, academics, family life, community. Can you comment on that? What can we do to help our kids?
Yeah, I think if even just tying it in with the nervous system, the impacts that chronic stress has are well researched, and we know that it can have lifelong effects if you aren't working hard to identify your emotions, express your emotions, and to work through them. And ways that we can do that include movement, and even going back to basics before that, learning about our emotions, more than just happy, mad, sad. Those are very surface emotions, but a lot of those emotions are rooted in other things that are caused by very stressful or traumatic situations. So going back to the basics of learning about our emotions, learning how to talk about our emotions, how to appropriately express our emotions, which is really important for kids. And I think that goes hand in hand a lot with the work that I do, and where yoga and movement can be effective. And where do you feel that emotion? What happens to your body when you get mad or sad? Like, do you get tingly or hot or sweaty? And giving kids and adults the words and the tools that they need to express that. So along with that, some other options are just learning coping skills or implementing better self-support routines like journaling or meditating, and mindfulness-based practices can really help to bring the nervous system back to regulation and alleviate some of the dysregulation and the overstimulation, which, like you said, Maria, is coming from all angles all the time.
Yes.
And that's I have this conversation a lot in the work I do, and especially with parents, of like, we're in a really tough place of, as adults, learning how to navigate information coming at everywhere. And then also being able to help our kids learn how to do that is really difficult, a really difficult position to be in right now.
Was just having that exact same conversation with somebody. What I said, sometimes the parents don't have the capacity to support their kids because they themselves don't have the tool set or the awareness or the tool set to know how to deal with that. And frequently you say, you hear things like don't cry, don't feel that way. I was having a conversation with a loved one, and he said something about feeling, well, don't feel that way. And I said, well, I feel that way. So just because you don't want me to feel that way doesn't mean that I'm just going to shut down and not feel that way. I'm telling you how I feel, and let's have a conversation about that, which can be uncomfortable because in many cultures, we're not taught to discuss our emotions, right? It's vulnerable. It's uncomfortable. You're putting yourself out there. You might be judged, and we're all human. And I will tell you, when I have mindset classes with adults, sometimes somebody will be like, I feel so embarrassed to share this, but I feel like the worst mother ever, right? And they're so embarrassed. And I'll be like, well, Anybody else on the call ever felt like they're the worst mother ever? Every hand that goes up, and suddenly you feel like, oh, like it's not just me. There's nothing wrong with me. That just, we all go through those human emotions of growth and experience. And, I tell my husband that raising a child is gives you a whole different opportunity for growth.
Oh, absolutely. I can second that and raise my hand to that. And I think that what we see, like as adults, yes, we kind of were maybe shut down a little bit as we were kids, or like, you don't need to cry right now. Why are you crying right now? Why are you having that feeling right now? And we're kind of seeing some of the impacts of that as this generation is coming up of like, I, as a mom now, want my child to express all of the feelings. I want to see her cry and get mad and tell her that it is okay to do that because we are human and we have these emotions for a reason. And we live in such a disconnected, connected society that we truly feel alone in those situations, like you mentioned, of like feeling like a bad mom or that I am alone in whatever is happening, when in reality, you're not. We just don't have good spaces to have those conversations and to learn from each other anymore by how our society, especially in America, how we're set up.
Yeah, something very powerful that you said. You said we're, how did you say it? We're so connected, disconnected. And that is like a great statement. I mean, our life is so publicly out there. And yet at the same time, the human connection and the depth of the relationships is not what it used to be. Mm-hmm. And, now that we see like AI, which is great for certain things, but I just think it's the way the kids are growing up nowadays with social media, and the peer pressure is so amplified and magnified on them. My daughter is a teenager, especially as somebody who's trying to discover herself and figure out who she is. There's just so much more pressure on kids. And again, as adults, when we're so disconnected, there's the saying of it takes a tribe to raise a kid. And now we don't have those tribes. The power of those tribes are not the same. They're not safe places where we can be vulnerable and share how we feel and seek support.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And just touching on social media, I've pretty vocal about the topic of social media and kids on my social media platforms. It's really hard because that is where they're finding connections. That is where they are learning and growing and finding their community of similar people. And on the flip side of it, they're also not getting fully factual information, and they're taking in all of this content that maybe isn't safe or age appropriate or
true.
The best or true. And it's so difficult to walk the line of, I want my kid to have this experience and to be on to explore social media because that is where we're at as a world. But I also want them to be safe and not self-diagnosing and not meeting who knows who they're meeting on social media. And it's just really difficult for them and parents to navigate that and then to come into their own. And also my daughter is a toddler. She's going to be 3. Like, where is AI going to be in 5 years when she is, starting to explore this? And how does that look? But it definitely takes away, I think, from the face-to-face social interactions, which is what we really need and crave and are designed as human beings to thrive on.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I would tell you, as a parent, that's exactly what I am. That is how my daughter communicates with her friends. They have their community online, but then sometimes she'll come and ask questions that I'm like, whoa, like, where did that come from? Mm-hmm. And she saw it somewhere online. And, it has also brought up the need to have very adult-like conversations when she's just a teen. I mean, honestly, I feel like at her age, I was playing with dolls. I don't know. Like, I definitely was a lot far clueless, but I have to explain things. And we're constantly talking about safety and the cloud and what you share and like all of those things. because it's a thing, and that's the world that they're growing up in. Yeah. Anything else you would like to add on that topic before we start wrapping up?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Any piece of advice or a favorite quote you want to share with our audience?
I think my piece of advice is to just do your best. And in the context of your own mental health and wellness, listen to what you feel like you need, and listen to also what your kids need, and seek help if you can, whether that's professional help through a friend or a loved one. Reach out, because you are not alone, and you don't have to be alone.
Yeah, there are a lot of resources out there. And I, a lot of times I do have to say, I see that more in women. I don't know if that's your experience as well, but there is such a guilt if making time for yourselves, for your needs, like your even wants. Sometimes you just want to go for a walk and you can't because you have to do ABCD. And I think we do ourselves such a disservice of not giving ourselves that space and time. Sometimes it's just 10 minutes, 15 minutes to just regroup and reground. And I want to reinforce that by saying, when you give yourself what you want and when you feel wholesome and good, you can serve those around you, your kids, your family, your community, your coworkers, whoever it is, so much better than when your cup is empty.
Yes, exactly.
Ryanne, what's your definition of rebellious?
Living my true, authentic life. And when the world tells me that I shouldn't, and still doing it.
Love that. Very cool. Ryanne, where can people find you, follow you, learn more about all that you do?
You can find me on Instagram. It's at Ryanne.Mellick. And that is also my website, RyanneMellick.com. If you are also listening and in Minnesota and seeking professional help, you can find information on my website for that as well.
Do you only work with people locally? Do you work with people remotely?
I do work with people remotely. However, it's just currently in the state of Minnesota right now.
Okay. Well, Ryanne, thank you so much for your time. You guys, if you have any questions that you would like us to address, certainly feel free to share them here. Ryanne, thanks so much for being here with us, sharing your wisdom and knowledge and insight and inspiration. Wish you continuous luck. And you guys, thanks for tuning in, and make sure to stay rebellious. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Can't get enough of those rebellious conversations? Do make sure you subscribe, like, and share with your friends.